Everyone, thank you for joining us for this regular meeting of USD 230 Board of Education. Rachel, please take the roll.
Mrs. Horn,
Here.
Mr. Chitwood,
Present.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Here.
Mr. Ewing, Mrs. Milius,
Here.
Mr. Hull,
Here.
Mrs. Baker. We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, moving on to approval of the agenda.
Madam President, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Rachel, please take the vote.
Mr. Chitwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Hull,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing.
Yes.
Approved.
Awesome. Thank you. Would everyone rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to 4.01, our mission and vision. We read these at all of our meetings to keep these goals at the forefront of all of our decision making. Our mission is to be a school district that engages students to learn, create, adapt, and succeed in an ever-changing world. And our vision is to maintain small town values and empower each student to achieve world-class success. All right, moving on to 5.01, public participation.
No cards were presented.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, next up is our consent agenda, which includes the approval of the consent agenda items, approval of the minutes, clerk's report, treasurer's report, payroll and claims, personnel, approve sick leave buyback, approve natural gas contract, approval of Spring Hill High journalism travel to Nashville, workman's comp rates and property casualty rates for fiscal year 26. Approval of Greenbush invoice for parents as teacher services, KSDE special education tip fund grants, Blazer Works contracts, middle school athletic activities code of conduct, student acceptable use policy, 26-27 district calendar, content filter, and KASB membership.
Madam President, I will move to approve what you just said, the consent agenda items 602 through 18.
There's a motion.
Second.
Thank you, Keith. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, Rachel, please take the vote.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Hull,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Chitwood.
Yes.
Approved.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 7.01, good news, recognitions and announcements. Dr. Luttrell.
Yes, even though the summer has started, we do have some recognitions that we want to at least pay some verbal recognition for this evening and hopefully get some of them in later this summer. Those of you that know, we had graduation on the 17th of May, and we had 253 diplomas that were conferred on that day to the class of 2025. That was just, again, our brick and mortar students, which once again was a record number in the history of the USD 230. The other numerous noteworthy items I want to mention, even though the students were unable to be here this evening, and we are working with the Spring Hill High School administration, they hope to have them here to get some formal recognition, and maybe we can, ask them a few questions about their experience at an upcoming meeting. But as you know, a couple meetings ago, we had some of our students that had qualified for the Forensically National Tournament. We had one of our students that qualified for that in Chicago in early June. Kaylee Howell qualified for the all the way to the semifinals where she placed in 26th place out of 180. And she was also awarded a medal for making the semifinals. Again, that was the farthest that, one of our students has made it in quite some time. And she is a junior and will be returning this next year. And again, hopefully we'll get her back. And then also, speaking of Kaylee, she also, the FFA state convention that was held recently in Manhattan, they have competitions there. And one of the categories you can enter is extemporaneous speaking. And those of you that aren't familiar with extemporaneous speaking, you basically on very short notice are given a topic. You have X amount of time to prepare, and then you have to give an oratory on that particular topic. And Kaylee Howell was in that category, and she placed first in the entire state of Kansas for that category. And she will represent the great state of Kansas as well as Spring Hill High School at the National FFA Convention that will be held in Indianapolis this fall during the month of October. So congratulations to Kaylee. Also, with some of our activities and athletics, as we wound down the spring season, we want to say congratulations to our varsity girls softball team for their outstanding second place finish at the Class 5 state tournament, where they, in the end, did drop a heartbreaking 8-7 decision. But again, a great season to them. And again, we'll hopefully get some of them here at a later meeting. And then also we want to say congratulations and a shout out to Jack Janovic. You might remember Jack came back in the fall when their cross country team won the Class 5 state cross country title. Well, Jack was also at the state track meet in Class 5, was the first place finisher in the 800-meter run. And he ran a time of 1:53.7, which, for those of you that may not be familiar with track and field, that's very, very fast. In fact, was such a fast time, it also would have won Class 6. Okay, so again, congratulations to Jack and the coaches for that particular honor. And then also in track, as far as a high finish, the boys 3,200-meter relay team finished second, took silver in Class 5. That's the 2-mile relay. And they ran a time of 7:54. So again, very fast. So congratulations to them. And we hope to get some of them here in a later meeting. And then you will also see there for your reading enjoyment, just the building highlights for the month of May, a lot of year-end activities that they highlighted. Some of them put pictures in. So when you have time, you can peruse through that. But that's my good news announcements and recognitions for this meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Luttrell, and congrats to all these amazing kiddos. I cannot wait to have them here and congratulate them in person. Okay, moving on, 8.01, we need an executive session.
Madam President, I move that the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel to protect the privacy interest of unidentifiable individuals. Under COMA, those to be in the session include the Board of Education members, Superintendent of School and Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and administrators as requested. The executive session to begin at 6:12, with the open meeting resuming at 6:45? 6:45 at this place.
Okay, motion
I'll second.
and a second. Any discussion? Rachel, please take the vote.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Hole,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Chitwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
approved.
Thank you. Feedback. We know, yeah, he is. All right, we are back in session. Okay, moving on to 9.01, our strategic plan update on world-class staff.
This is an annual report that we've done the last couple of years. We do it in two segments. This is segment 2, and our HR department, Michelle Hackney, as well as the successor. It's already started, will become the director on July 1, is Eric Tyler, and they're going to kind of give you an update on our world-class staff, and we'll cover the topics of, some of the themes that have come out in some various conversations that they've had with teachers, both that are staying as well as maybe departing, as well as talk to you a little bit about, maybe I think she might give you some data. As you know, one of the board goals that we've really worked on over a period of years, put a lot of variables together to try to increase our retention rate. She's got some data on that as well. So Ms. Hackney, Michelle, and Mr. Tyler, Eric, I'll let you all take it from here.
Good evening, and my last presentation, so fond farewell. Well, this evening, we're going to share some really exciting data about the retention numbers, which is the highlight of this presentation, that upward trend of those, and some feedback from our teachers on things that we're doing really great and things that we can work on. And Eric and I will be co-presenting this evening. So move this forward. These are the topics that we'll hit today. And this is really fun. We were geeking out last week. So one of the questions on our stay interview was, if you were recruiting for the Spring Hill School District, what would you tell people are the great things about working in Spring Hill? So we take that whole column of the Google spreadsheet that the survey produced, dumped it into ChatGPT, and said, we need some marketing, some recruitment material for this. It, in a matter of seconds, produced the most amazing recruitment information, scripts for videos, slogans, you name it, it was there. The question was, would you like for this to be tailored for a particular college or university? With Eric having been from the University of Kansas, as was I, we put yes for the University of Kansas, but of course, and created an email that we could send to students at KU that are in the education program. So it was just really fun. But the point of this is that from that information from our 129 respondents for that stay interview, this is one of the slogans. And I just loved this, that it really is, it's why I've worked here, that I feel like I matter here and I feel like I've been supported. So it was a fun byproduct of Eric and I playing a little bit as we were doing this presentation. So we've got the information shown here of our retention rate. And I might note that on this 24-25 number, that 92.8, it does not include administration. And if we did pull out the retiring teachers that are leaving, that would boost up to 93.9. So that was a question that was posed to me last summer during this presentation, Mr. Chitwood, and wanted to come prepared with that number. So depending on how you want to look at it, it's either 92.8 or 93.9 if those retirees that are moving on to other things that are certified teachers. The next 3 slides include that attrition data. Where are our teachers going? And I have those listed out, and I'm not going to zoom through each one and go over each one, but I did want to highlight a couple interesting features. This year, we're down to 8 that are leaving to go to another Kansas district. It's pretty important because as we talk about things we've improved, I think that's played a part in that. The year before that, it was 20 teachers. And so that trend is really improving. So I think that's something to note. And over the past 3 years, we've had 31 of our teachers that have left education altogether. And as we think about some low-hanging fruit, and we've got a couple of those those individuals back that maybe have looked at some other things, done some other things in life and thought, I really miss kids. I really miss making that kind of a difference. But I do think that might be our low-hanging fruit of getting people back to the profession. So some really just interesting statistics, but the next 3 slides have where have our people that have left us gone over the last 3 years. Okay.
All right, so now we're going to go into the qualitative data. And the way that we pulled this was in unique ways with stay interviews, exit interviews, surveys, electronically, and then also in person as well. So we decided to break down this data into stay themes, really just thinking about what are the key things that Spring Hill staff members are really enjoying about the district. And I'm going to share the top 3 on each one of these slides. So when you think about and look forward to going into work every day, what's the number one thing that you think about? What came up the most is the students. Developing the relationship with the students is something that is very important to our Spring Hill staff members, really cultivating those relationships to want to build future leaders. The next thing is around coworkers and teamwork. Individuals really love going into work every day, developing those relationships with their coworkers to build upon that good team chemistry. And then number 3 is actually building those strong working relationships as well. Not only with coworkers, but I think something that kind of sets our district apart is the way that we have administrative support as well. So themes and staff responses about working in the Spring Hill district, supportive work environment. When you're thinking about retaining staff, you want to ensure that they're feeling supported. Colleagues and team culture. Every building that I've gone into with Michelle over these past few weeks, I feel the positive culture and also the climate from the students all the way to the staff members, everyone having that positive and engaging mindset each and every day. And then this is something else that kind of sets us apart is the community ties and also living in the district. There are so many individuals that work for us here at the Spring Hill School District that have a vested interest in the students. And that is really the mark that really kind of sets ourselves apart versus other Kansas City school districts as well. This is a slide that we should feel very proud of and appreciate everyone here with the board and Dr. Luttrell and Dr. Robinson making this difference, and also Michelle. This is talking about and highlighting the 3 biggest differences that we have seen going from the close of last year to this year. And this is what staff members are saying verbatim, facilities and buildings. So Kylie, appreciate everything that you do with your staff, high level execution from the outside of the building to the inside of the building. Something that Michelle has talked to me a lot about, and with me having experience working for a competitive school district in Kansas City, teacher pay and compensation really does stick out. Not only for a new teacher entering into the workforce, but also those educators that have a significant amount of years of experience, have the educational attainment, and they're able to maximize their earning potential as well. And I think that's leading into some really good retention rates. And Dr. Smith's work with PLC and also curriculum alignment are something else that is viewed upon very highly from our staff members as well. So we, with these stay things, we wanted to really break down what would be 8 core strategies potentially for recruitment to really highlight to those future educators looking to enter into the workforce and to hopefully choose Spring Hill as well. So some things that really stick out to me is a supportive and collaborative caring culture. That is our lifeblood each and every day. And that's leading into that remarkable 93% retention rate. If I had to, I'm not a betting man, but if I had to put money on it, it's probably significantly higher than a lot of these other school districts within the Kansas City metro. Small town feel and also big opportunities. We are seeing this and experiencing this with the amount of growth potential that we're seeing with internal staff members moving up from a professional development standpoint. And that's going to be something else to really highlight moving forward as well, too. Number 3 and number 4 is around growth and innovation and also exceptional students and families. The amount of engagement that I've just seen in my short time here with the students being locked in to learn each and every day academically, and then also the family engagement as well. I think that is something that should be celebrated within this district and what will continue to set ourselves apart as well, too. Strong colleague and administrative relationships and professional autonomy and innovation. When you think about the strong colleagues and administrative relationships, a lot of times when individuals will leave the workforce, that is the number one reason why they leave. They don't feel like they're being supported. And support from the administrative level to all of our administrators making that difference each and every day, that is what's leading into our significant levels of retention rates that we want to continue to move forward with as well, too. The last 2 is the competitive compensation and benefits. Not only when you think about the competitive pay that we offer, but the great health insurance package and life insurance package that we offer. It is very competitive. I've done some analysis at my prior employer and to see how we kind of stack up versus some other districts within the KC Metro. I know I've said it over and over again. It is our competitive advantage, and that is something that we want to continue to highlight. And I think this kind of piggybacks off of the last point, the job security and also the district stability. When you think about how much the district is growing, it is a leverage pool that we can really pull to identify top talent and also to keep top talent within our school district.
Isn't he going to be great? My gosh, just makes me happy. Anyway, we'll talk about exit interview responses. And we had 13 of our 26 exiting staff members share their feedback. Now, in years past, we would have really gotten pounded on pay, student behavior. So it was really nice with this exit interview information to kind of see the tide changing a little bit. The reasons why the top reasons why our exiting staff talked about why they were leaving, new opportunities and growth outside of the teaching profession. And as sad as it is to see those people leaving, that wording is different. It's not, I couldn't wait to get out of there. It was, I want to see what's out there. And actually, many of them did state, I want to go see what's out there, but I may return. And we lost some great ones and we would take them back in a heartbeat. Changing life events and circumstances, staying home with children, moving, some things like that. And then some financial and family situations, someone, maybe 3 or 4 children, it just wasn't economically feasible to pay childcare. What do you value most about the Spring Hill schools? Just people delivering that positive work environment. And that really does go hand in hand with the stay interview information. That high level of support and appreciation from administrators. By and large, the people that are leaving are not leaving because they dislike their bosses, that they dislike the people that they work with. And then that creative autonomy when teaching the curriculum. We have great curriculum maps. We have great resources, and having that little, the ability to be a little bit creative within the curriculum. And what do you want to see changed most in the Spring Hill School District? And I think that room for improvement question is really important. Teachers wanting more input in district-wide decision-making, looking at staffing and SPED teacher caseloads. And then I love number 3, wanting more professional development and wanting it more frequently. So that just really speaks highly of the quality of people that we do have working for us, and even the quality of people that are leaving, that they are craving that additional learning. And I think our teaching and learning department has done a marvelous job of continuing to deliver more of that professional development. And then on to progress. what I've highlighted on this is the frontline implementation. The items below are things that we've been working really hard on through our negotiations, through a lot of the work we're doing. So some major improvements that we've made with that frontline implementation, and we are really deep into that right now, is really going to build our efficiencies. It's brought an ability for teachers and staff members to interact more with their information. So thank you, Board of Education, for that. And I can't wait for Eric as the year progresses, that maybe he can revisit that topic and kind of share where we've gone with Frontline. It's exciting. It's one of the best implementations that we've done. And we've got a lot more work to do on that, but I think it's really going to bring a lot to our employees in our district. And then things that we were challenged with in studying and improving, kind of what are we working on? I have check marks next to the items that we are actively very deep in studying and improving. And I think we're already seeing some things with student behavior, some payoffs of those things with plan time, but some other items that we've been looking at and what we're really, I would say, very deep in or on the tail end of working on. That insurance RFP, we're looking for that to go out in 2027. And we brought on our new broker, I believe it was April 1 of 2025. So making some progress there. And then turning over the floor to Eric to talk about early stage recruitment strategy ideas.
Yeah, so in 25, 26, a big focus for us will be the early stage recruitment. It's more competitive than ever to recruit future teachers. And the biggest way to kind of stand out from other school districts within the same marketplace is to recruit them earlier. So recruit them as freshmen and also sophomores before they actually graduate in college. And it's a lot of unique ways that you can kind of utilize that and be creative, such as leveraging career services at different universities. Speaking to the School of Education classrooms to really get in front of those freshmen and sophomores. If you can develop a relationship with those students early, it will really help us stick out versus all the other districts within the KC Metro and also outside of the KC Metro as well. Another big strategy that we're going to work on is substitute teacher strategies to really build a bench for our substitute teachers to fill those absences that we have for certified staff. We want to ensure that we can be fully staffed on a day in and day out basis. So really getting out to those local career fairs to generate awareness for the substitute teaching positions that we have available and also highlight the competitive pay that we offer on a daily basis as well. Some of our current openings that we have right now on the certified side is 2 special education teachers at Spring Hill High School. We actually have a speech language pathologist position open as well. And then we just posted an anticipated secondary ELA teacher position. And we'll allow Michelle to bring it home.
One of the items that has popped up on both the stay and exit interview would be staffing, and wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about elementary class sizes and how we look at that, and just to provide some additional detail. What do we do when we do have some elementary classes that are creeping up? I might add that over the past 5 years, we've had 22 or fewer students in a class. 75 to 80% of the classrooms just have that 22 or lower. So I think we traditionally keep them quite low, but just to look at, what are our limits? What are we looking at? We don't like a kindergarten class to be above 23. You can see that for first grade, and then that second grade and third grade at 24, and then fourth and fifth at 26. Depending on your class, 23 kindergartners, actually 23 kindergartners of any year, anytime in, August 12th, it's a lot, but we're looking at that. So as numbers are creeping up to some of these points, what do we do? What do we think about? We ask ourselves, can we afford this? We really stay abreast of those numbers regularly. We're collecting those numbers from our buildings usually about every week to kind of stay on top of those. So can we afford it? And can we afford not to add it? What are the student needs? And then, we're not made of money as a district. We're trying to really be good stewards of money. What is the plan B? So last year, as we were getting closer to the start of school, we had Timber Sage and Wolf Creek had a couple classes that were creeping up. And the plan B in that case was a teacher aide. As it turned out, when school started, their numbers did kind of fall back into that range. So that was good. And we had that teacher aide in those two buildings to kind of help support them. So that's an option. There are less pleasant options. If you have just a limited amount of money, is there a restructuring of programs? Do we look at positions differently? Do we look at boundaries, which that is, that's probably the least favorite of anything. Do we look at the out of district numbers, out of boundary numbers? So, we do pay very close attention to these numbers. Dr. Luttrell and Dr. Robinson know these numbers to the second, and just really looking at the budget impact. How does this help students, and just staying on top of that. So that's kind of the numbers we're working with, kind of the rationale, the way we deal with that. But wanted to share, since it was something that did pop up from time to time on our Stay and Exit interviews, to share a little bit more details that we're really not trying to punish teachers or anything or make life difficult, that there are lots of things, and we don't want to change our programming or eliminate some positions to create more. So
Have there been times when, if you're at one school, kind of close to those numbers, that you ask for voluntary people to move to another school, or is that not really common practice?
it was years ago. Well, it wasn't that long ago, but when Dayton Creek was open, we did ask for some volunteers to do some relief in a couple places. So it's not unheard of. And we do make it a practice to look at the whole picture. Like if there's a class in one grade level in one building that has very small class sizes, can we get away with one fewer there to move that teacher over? So
Mhm. Okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you keeping the cost in mind with all this, because I feel like that's a big piece of it. And it's not been easy with open enrollment and predicting some of those numbers, especially with the environment in some of our really close districts. So thank you for doing that. The other thing I'd love for our district to keep in mind as we move towards design plans for new pods and whatever that looks like, is that if our max is 24 or 26 or 23 or whatever that is, in those pods, making sure we've prepped for those max number of students. So we have those flexible seating options, and we have those cubbies, and we have all of that for the 26 or the 24 or the 22 or whatever that looks like. I'm not sure that maybe that number has always been used, or maybe it has and we've shuffled the classrooms, but keeping that in mind as we're planning for some of those new pods.
I'm going to miss you.
I will miss you all for sure.
So I appreciate you bringing forward the number is 93.9 in my world. And I love seeing a 3% year-over-year improvement. Because as I put it last year, very pointedly, last year's number said they were choosing to leave us. And that hurts. And I didn't mean it to hurt anybody, but we're moving in the right direction where I get it, people have life choices, and I don't want anybody to stay here who doesn't want to be here. But I want this to be a place where people want to stay. I really do. So that's a great improvement. So kudos to everybody for getting that done. And then, so some of the other things that kind of stood out for me is recognizing the challenges we grow into a district, and teachers saying, hey, essentially, I wrote it down in my notes, is teachers want to be brought along for the ride. And I hear that, and the communication around what we're doing and where we're going is critical there. So I just want to say, I hear that. And then one of the challenges for Eric, that maybe if you can kind of get this question, because you're not going to have the answer right now, in recruiting new talent, especially out of college, is how big of an issue is housing for us in our district to attract that talent. I'm curious to know, is it holding us back in our candidate pool? That's all I got in my notes.
I'll just add, you have been such a wonderful contributor to the school district for a lot of years, and a lot of kids have benefited from your time here. And so I just think it's amazing that you get to go out on such a high presentation. Like, that's the way your career deserved to wind up for this district. So that's amazing.
We mentioned that amongst ourselves as well.
Okay.
Are you gonna play outro music for you?
Well, any
This is
other?
where the mic literally drops.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys
you.
very much. Okay, moving on, 9.02, request to provide easement to the city of Spring Hill for expansion of 199th Street.
Okay, if you remember from our last meeting, Mr. Meek and I brought to you the request from the city of Spring Hill to give them an easement for the roundabout, meaning the widening of the road out here in front of us, 199th Street, from the roundabout up to Renner. And at the time, as Mr. Meek and I had conversations, verbal conversations with the city of Spring Hill about, the plans and what was included in that plan. Our impression that we presented to you last meeting, and I'll let Mr. Meek kind of preface that, our impression had been, with nothing in writing, had been that giving the easement would in turn have the city of Spring Hill take the money that we would have gotten, the 6,000 or whatever for the easement, but they would then put in the trail that ran, along, so that the kind of the sidewalk type trail. And then after you all were good with that, came back, and Mr. Meek and I decided, we need to make sure that we get in writing from the city what that intent is, so that there's no miscommunication. So when that came back, it basically was the opposite. We had misunderstood, apparently, and they were like, no, in writing, their proposal was, you give us the easement, you trade back in the 6,000 for the easement, and we'll apply that towards the cost of your segment of the trail. You would still owe this amount. And so that's when we decided, well, we need to, if that's the case, we do need to make sure you all are aware of that. But then before we ask for action, we wanted to just share that out. And then we also want to go back to the city and just ask them some more questions, because there are some specifics about if we agree to even cover the cost of the trail at the amount, once they bid that out and you get a general contractor involved that we have no control over with any type of a project of that degree, there's going to be variables that come up that could be cost overruns, or, well, if it, and they come back and say, well, we need another 30 grand. So we want to get all that spelled out. So Mr. Meek was very much on top of it. We probably need to pause this and get our questions answered, but I'm going to turn over to Mr. Meek, and then you have questions, we'll kind of go from there. But we are not asking for action at all tonight like we had originally planned.
Yeah, I wish I was going out on a high like Michelle was, but mine's not quite as good. We did have conversations with staff, as Dr. Luttrell said. One of the things they were talking about was potentially crediting the $80,000 stormwater sewer assessment that they had us pay earlier towards the costs, and trading that out and trying to find some other ways to work. Well, I think the staff member got overrode at a higher level from the city, and said, no, the school's going to pay for all of it. This was originally a part of agreement. I'm not going to argue that with them at all. When we built this building, part of the deal was they wanted us to put the trail in then. Well, we said, no, we're not gonna put the trail in now because we don't know where 199th Street's gonna go. And if we had put it in where they would have wanted us to put it in, then it would be getting torn up right now when they get ready to do 199th. So that was our whole reason for doing this. In the way, kind of in arrears, we'll do it later when you actually have a plan for where 199th Street will go. The cost is very much in line with what we had predicted. Actually, I won't say it, but it's a good cost compared to what we had budgeted back then. From our engineers saying what it should cost in 2019 dollars. And so I feel like it's a fair assessment. I am asking them to provide me though with a line item as much as I can of what those costs are in exact feet. I want to make sure that we're only paying for our 2,640 feet of it, not for, 3,000 feet or whatever it is. I want to make sure we're paying for only the exact amount that we should be paying for. And I want to see what their unit costs are on some stuff and just make sure that they're still in line. There are a couple other points that I want to make with them as far as how they treat the school district. Maybe because I'm getting ready to retire, I don't care as much. Every time that we get ready to do a project, that's always, well, the school district can do this, this, and this. I mean, a good example would be Forest Spring. When we put that in, they required us to put a sidewalk to connect 193rd Street to 191st Street across the whole property. It wasn't too big a deal because we were able to incorporate it in the design. We would have wanted a sidewalk to come up and join in where they put it. The architects worked great to really not make it an added burden to us, but it's some of those things that they don't necessarily ask developers and stuff to do, and we'd like to be treated as a developer. We want to make sure when a developer's putting in a development, are they being asked to put a 10-foot trail along the edge of their property? In a lot of places, when you look at the new developments, they're not even be asked to put a sidewalk along the existing street. They're bringing them out to the road and that's it. Are they, so that's some of my questions for the city to try to make sure that they will treat us. I think, honestly, I think they treat us sometimes as if we're their cash cow and it's a way to get more money out of the school district. And it also will allow them to take it from people that live in not just the city of Spring Hill, but the city of Olathe as well, because they're all part of taxpayers to us. So, I just want to make sure we're being treated fairly as a developer before we sign off on it. So,
Where would the money for the trail come from? Oh, sorry, Keith, are you trying to ask something?
it would be out of capital outlay. So,
Capital outlay.
Well, could we do I know you probably won't get this negotiated before you're done, but
I
could
hope
we
to.
just not do a not to exceed price and they give us the price and that's the deal, or we're not signing a contract? How does that work on their end?
That would be my recommendation is this is the amount we'll give you for this, not only for the trail work, but anything else to do with 199th Street. If they start construction and they decide, we'd really like for you guys to go ahead and connect, another piece of culvert piping or something somewhere. No.
Right. Yeah.
Anything else on 199th Street is yours. This is all that we're willing to contribute to it.
We would do a capped amount and that's it. So there's no opportunity for them to come back and add. If we have to pay
In
for it,
writing,
that's
yeah.
probably the way to do it is
Yeah.
capped amount.
If they want the easement, that's what I would recommend that we make them do, is put this in writing that this is the amount for all costs associated for the district for 199th Street improvements. So
Improvements, right?
yeah. And, a couple other things that were involved back when we did this was they were going to do a comprehensive plan. The city 199th Street comprehensive plan wasn't finished. And that's one of the reasons why we said, you don't even know where the road's going to go. Why would we put a sidewalk in? I want to see the comprehensive plan and make sure that they're asking people on the other sides to do it. This sidewalk trail will go from Ridgeview to, not Lackman, we'll go 1 mile. The developer's not on the hook to put in the next mile or the next half mile over, or the landowners there. The city is doing that. Again,
So
kind of a poor.
We're doing
It's a
from
sore subject.
Ridgeview, we're doing from Ridgeview to in front of the
The-
building, and then the city's picking up past our
Yes.
boundary to
Yeah.
Renner.
Yes. And one of the agreements we had with them was that the developer would hook on to our trail when they did it. Well, yes, the developer's going to hook on to the trail, but not to our trail. So the developer have a few feet of sidewalk maybe, or, would be the most that they're going to have to build a 4-foot sidewalk from, 20 feet of it or something like that, which is no big deal. So again, it's about being treated fairly, and I'm kind of glad to do this in an open session so they can hear our deals, and hopefully you guys have the same opinion as me. So if the city listens to this, they can understand, that we don't need to be their cash place to go to when they want to do something else.
One other question that I have about the whole kind of an overarching question. There was some talk several years ago about being able to incorporate some of these new things into a cross-country course. I mean, we have the state champion cross-country team and we don't have a home course.
Mhm.
Is this could this be part of any of that?
I mean, obviously it could be. It's a concrete sidewalk, which isn't what they.
So it's not really a trail, it's a sidewalk.
It's considered a trail. By a trail, it means that it doesn't have to meet the specifications of a sidewalk.
Of 80.
Sidewalks can only have so much slope one way or another, or so much rise and fall. Trails can exceed that. So there's less dirt work and stuff to be done on it and all by using it as a trail. So. And it's going to be, looking at the plans, it's going to be very, very close. There's only a couple of areas where it's going to be just a little bit steeper on slope and stuff. So it's really close to just a sidewalk.
Well, I thank you I know you came to us at the prior meeting and said you were still in negotiations. And so I do think that you were trying to work it out. And I feel like there's still some work to be done with the city. I feel like they weren't negotiating in good faith in some of this, because there's no way you came to us without knowing that there was options there. So I'm hoping that there's still space over there to continue this conversation. And you and I have sat in quite a few meetings, and I agree with you. The city is not always the best partner with us, and we aren't treated very well sometimes. And I'm hoping that this is an opportunity to strengthen that relationship and to collaborate a little bit on what's best for our city. And so I hope that they're open to further conversation about it. I hope that us just picking up the bill and doing this because they want to expand it isn't the last option. So I'm hoping that there's opportunities for it to be a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. Again, I will reiterate that we did make a deal when we put this building in, knowing that down the road we would have to pay for it. Again, that's not the only part of this. It's, who else along 199th Street have they put this 10-foot trail in? Nobody. I don't believe, I tried to pull it up and I could not find anything for the developer to the west where they're going to be putting in. I may be wrong. And that's one of the questions I'm asking them to answer for me. Is the developer over there, are they going to continue this 10-foot trail, or is it just going to be this 1 mile? The city limits will run out at 100 at Renner Road. So for now, so obviously they won't be pushing for anything further there, but yeah.
Mr. Meek, if you don't mind, just enlighten me again. Not to get into the legalities of it, but you were negotiating with them, right? And it had to do with the storm drainage and the runoff and the expense that we paid for that, right? And it was discussed that there might be a credit applied to the cost of this, I'll call it a trail, sidewalk,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, that was going to be applied. These were the discussions that were going on, right?
Yeah.
And just ballpark numbers. We had spent 80 grand on the runoff piece, and we're looking at 100 and what for the sidewalk?
$131,000.
$131. So call it 50 grand difference, right? A
Yeah.
$50,000 delta. To me, it seems incredibly reasonable. That was an incredibly reasonable offer
Mhm.
on our part considering that the city is picking up the other half mile,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I don't understand where they get off thinking that, and I'm not going to say they reneged on that because it was an active, open discussion, open negotiation, right? But that seems like a reasonable deal.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, and again, it was a low level, I call it
I
low level
understand.
staff. It
No,
wasn't-
I
it
understand, but it seems like a very reasonable thing to
Yeah.
consider, when you factor in that the city is going to have to pick up the entire tab for the other half.
Yeah,
And so there's a part of me that says, well, you know what, then let's take that off the table and let the city worry about this other half mile themselves too, then.
Mhm.
If they're not grateful enough to kind of meet us in the middle. That's the way I feel about it. And the only other thing I'll say, and I've had a couple of discussions with some of the city leaders on this, and I'm sorry that I continue to make comparisons, but I've been in a community in Texas that was incredibly rapidly growing. And shame on our city leadership here that doesn't, at the time when they can most leverage those types of assets out of the developers, that they don't do it.
Mhm.
Because that's the time to do it, and you will get everything that you ask for in exchange for the money that those developers are going to make off of our land. So I'll throw that out there. And if anybody at the city wants to talk to me, I'm happy to have lunch and have that conversation with them. But in my opinion, it feels like going back to our offer of getting that credit, that to me is just a reasonable deal.
yeah, again, it was something that we were gonna pay no matter what, because the city, made everybody in the city pay the stormwater fee that they've done. It hit us, to me, pretty hard, compared to other ones, but they equitably applied that. I will give them that. But again, going back to our negotiations earlier, yes, it was a staff member that was in very good faith, trying to do the best that they could for us, but I, again, and I won't ask her to say who did it, because I don't want to get her in trouble unless she just says, yeah, it was this person, or it was a city council or whatever that, said to do it. So.
Well, I'll start off with, I will miss you too.
I may be back.
I'm
I
not
would love
trying
to have this done and be back next meeting with,
Yeah.
so I could wrap it up good. So,
the thing for me in this conversation is, the lack of the shared vision and awareness. We're building community-based schools for Spring Hill and Olathe and our people from our non-incorporated areas. We talk about putting in and having policies for the e-scooters, the e-bikes. Kids are getting to school the old-fashioned way, even though there's not as much muscle in it. We're creating that community model. And I think everybody's made the point here very fairly that we need the city to come along for that ride to keep making this community, family-oriented education system work for everybody. And asking everybody from Olathe to pay for the sidewalks, from unincorporated Miami County to pay for the sidewalks, from unincorporated Johnson County to pay for the sidewalks. I get that they're struggling with wastewater and that's holding them back. I get they're looking for $100 million, aren't we all? But if we lose sight of what we're trying to build together, it's going to be a real bumpy road. So that's kind of my part of the pitch to add.
Yeah.
You're going to say what you want to say, and quite frankly, I support you 100%. Go forth and do good things. But we've got we've got great people, great kids, and we just need to keep building great neighborhoods. And you're right, we can't afford to do it all. Now, I do have a specific question, which is, we were originally committed to blacktop, correct?
mhm.
But now we're paying for concrete?
No,
Okay.
the,
Just okay.
the cost for concrete is 197,000.
Okay.
Asphalt is 131,000. So
Well, then I'm
Yeah.
gonna, again, completely,
yeah, the city is picking up
the difference.
the difference there.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna completely agree with Keith's statement that you get a check for X amount if that's where we get to, even though I agree with Mr. Hall that I think there's a more equitable deal to be had here for all involved. Anyway, that's all I got to say.
No, I would agree. And that's my recommendation. If we can come to a deal, it's going to be a set amount. We will give you a check for this amount when construction is finished. One of the things in the letter they sent was you can write us a check now for this amount. And I'm like, no, I don't, I want to see the sidewalk before I write you the check. We'll put it in writing just as much as they will, that we'll give them the check for whatever amount it is if we end up writing them a check. But I don't want to see the board give them a check until the sidewalk is there.
Yeah, and just so, again, from my seat, as far as I'm concerned, I won't be voting for anything that isn't a fixed cost. I'm not going to vote for a blank check. Sorry, I've been bit by that before.
Yeah.
So,
No, I agree with you there. I mean, it's a set cost and this is what it is. And it is at the time the sidewalk's done, not not before they even have bid the project out. So, yeah. So. Thank you guys for the conversation. I hope the city might listen to you guys and what you've had to say as well. So,
Do you know when your next meeting with them is?
I do not. I asked today for setting up something later in the week here. So, find out if I get that.
I don't know about you, but I bet a couple of us or any of us would love to be present if you need. I mean, since some of your history is leaving us, having some of that knowledge and hearing some of that, I think is going to be.
Yeah, and I'll invite Kylie and Mark Williams in as well, just so that it's no longer just my history. In case this drags on, I want to make sure that there's continuity there too. So, yeah, so.
Oh, thank you. Any other thoughts or questions for Mr.
But
Meek?
I just wanted to say, Tim, thank you for all your service. You've been a great help to the district for sure.
Looking forward to the retirement though. as well.
Are gonna miss
All right.
you too.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thank
And
you.
like I said, hopefully I'm back in front of you in 2 weeks, but I'm not holding my breath either. So.
I already told you I'll miss you.
I want to miss all the board meetings though, maybe.
I didn't expect to get it all.
I miss you guys, but I'm not going to miss the meetings.
Thanks, Tim. All right, moving on, 9.03 IAQ assessment at Spring Hill Elementary School.
A few months ago, we did kind of task Mr. Delphia to look at a couple of our older schools in terms of just kind of measuring and doing some independent testing for various air quality and other environmental things that could be present, just to make sure that things were good. And we did do that. Mr. Delphia has gotten those results in, and he's going to kind of just basically in a nutshell give us a brief results. Those 904 and 903 and 904, they do kind of fit in together, and he'll kind of address both of those, here with his report. So Mr. Delphia.
Good evening. So Occutech was out at Spring Hill Elementary School and Spring Hill Middle School to do their indoor air quality testing. Just a brief overview of it. They took a total of 30 air samples, including one exterior sample. The mold spore concentrations in all samples were found to be below the exterior control sample or well within acceptable post remediation verification criteria. Temperature and humidity levels were in the recommended comfort parameters. You will see on the elementary school assessment that there are 5 TVOCs that are really high. That's just an anomaly with their testing equipment. So that is incorrect. That's not the correct reading. So they're just astronomical. If you see them there, they're way over 2,000. There was visible moisture damage was observed in ceiling tiles and around some of the block areas around the windows. It's called effervescence. It's when moisture gets into the block and pushes the minerals out from the block wall and it shows up on the outside. It's like a white powdery material. While that was seen, it was dry at the time, so I believe it was from previous when we had the water intrusion coming through the block wall. I don't think we've sealed that outside block wall with a special paint to seal that, and so I think it's from previous. And then the conclusion of the reports is both Shees and Spring Hill Middle School are safe to occupy. However, preventative maintenance measures should be continued, particularly to address roof leaks and any intrusion on block walls. So that is basically the report in a nutshell, and I'll stand for any questions.
Yeah, Kylie, thank you for doing that. And I want to give a shout out to some staff and parents that actually requested that we do this. You spoke to an anomaly, right?
Yep.
I can't find that in the report here, but I'll take your word for it. So there were some missed readings that they reported. Did they actually go back and then retest and get the correct readings?
I can do that if we want to, and I think we probably should.
I absolutely think we
Yeah.
should.
Is this up here?
I mean, if they had malfunctioning equipment or if there was something in their lab or whatever, I think we're entitled
Yeah, that's fine. We can do
to
that.
to
Absolutely.
get the correct numbers.
Yeah, because as it stands now with those VOCs
Right.
as reported, I mean, that's.
Yeah, it's on.
We
page-
can't.
It's on page 10 and I've got it.
Oh, yeah,
here.
there.
I don't
okay.
know if you
Yep,
see
yep,
it,
yep.
but
Okay.
they said this occurs when they're starting up their equipment and it warms up
Yeah,
and they'll get these and you can see these are the first 5 they took
yeah.
and they're just 4,000 is just, that's through the roof. I mean, that's just unheard of. So that's what they think it is. I'll have them come back out and retest it.
It shouldn't be a problem,
It
right?
shouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
Won't cost us
All right.
anything.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
Perfectly fine, but
Yeah.
it stood out to me when everything else is 3 and 200 and I'm like, and that's.
Yeah,
they
that's
said it's
painting in
happened
a,
before.
that's painting in a paint booth without a mask on.
Exactly.
Levels. I mean,
It
that's
is. Yeah.
serious. I'm sorry. On page 15 on the report, there are some areas where the sampling was above the control.
Yep.
Does that correlate to any of the concerns that staff had in the buildings?
What I was told is it's nothing to be concerned about. It could be, he says, a lot of times you can go in and deep clean the room and this will take care of this. If these readings were in the red, we'd have an issue. He's like, but these being a little bit over in the yellow is not really a big deal. It could be something as simple as going in, like I said, cleaning the room, doing a deep cleaning, cleaning the vents out, changing your air filters, things like that.
So maybe this is just some focus on this summer
Yeah.
might be warranted.
Sure. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. And that's what we do every
Hey.
summer. Yeah, we
Okay.
deep clean everything and we did do this at the end of the year. So, yeah, with the testing, so.
Can you tell me when you said some of it is just cleaning will help improve those scores? What is the difference between your general cleaning and what you would deep clean?
So general cleaning involves just going in, cleaning your tables, vacuuming, things like that, a little dusting once a week. Deep cleaning is you're going in and you're extracting the carpets, you're going through and cleaning the ceiling tiles, cleaning the vents, cleaning all your cabinet surfaces inside. I mean, it's just a more thorough cleaning. It's the difference.
And
Yeah.
that's proven to mitigate this sort of stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's what he told me. I'm not an expert in it. I asked him and that's what he said. He said, yeah, you can go in and deep clean a room and it will bring these levels down.
Well, and that was going to be one of my questions. So do we have a contract with somebody to do the vent cleaning? Or have we done vent cleanings at Cheese and Middle?
The deep cleanings.
No, actual duct cleaning, taking the registers
Oh,
off, taking the
no, we
returns
have
off.
not, no.
Okay.
I've never-
Well, and I
That's
was,
something I would probably welcome having to.
well, yeah, and I was
discussion
wondering if
about.
we couldn't roll that into the AC work that we're going to be doing on those two buildings anyway,
That's what I was gonna.
right? And just roll that in as part of that work and
Yeah.
expect that to be done. Because it seems ridiculous to me to be putting in new AC units and not have fresh, clean ducts
Sure.
at the same
I
time.
think that would be great and even warrant a retest after that work is done, just to see where we stand. So that's an even better strategy than just bringing somebody in.
I worry just the cleaning like that will just hold it for a minute, right? Like, because you can clean mold, but mold could come back. Like the environment's still there to have it, or all the spores and things like that to grow back. So I think that's my only worry is that, oh, it's clean and it works for a little bit, but then what happens in a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks after a big rain?
I want to preface this by saying there's nothing growing in there. This is in the air. These are the most common molds. You go outside, they're everywhere. There's nothing growing in there. They did a fantastic job. I mean, I watched the guy pull back cove base and look through the cabinets and look behind books. And I mean, they did a really extensive visual, looked at everything and, they didn't find anything. So I just want to point that out. There's nothing growing in there. That's just what's in the air. It's natural.
Great.
So-
I think that's a great clarification.
Yes.
Thank you, Kylie. But knowing that it's still coming in somehow, like through the vents or through, and even if it's just naturally out in that wooded area around both of those buildings, like there's lots of trees and
Sure.
whatever. So it would still eventually get in there without further work with the AVC and the
Yep.
filters and things like that. So
And just to put a finer point on it, my goal would be for us to end up with results that are under the control values on a consistent basis. Because, that's the function of HVAC is creating that environment. So.
Yeah, and we do pull in 100% outside air, so
Yeah.
keep that in mind. I mean, we've got to do so many air changes per hour. It's the state law, so we're pulling in outside air, constantly circulating that. And honestly, he said, these numbers are nothing. Again, I'm just reiterating this, nothing to be worried about. We could go into Spring Hill High School, we could go into Forest Spring Middle School and have the same sort of numbers with these little yellow dots. And he says, I've seen way worse, honestly. He said there's really nothing to worry about, but I'm more than glad to test again when we clean the ducts and do whatever.
Thanks for getting on it so quick.
Yeah, you're welcome. Mhm.
any other thoughts for Kylie? Okay. Keith, did you have any comments? Okay.
Sorry,
you.
no, Doug and John pretty much nailed it, so.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's take a break until 7:50. All right, we are back in session and moving on to 9.04 air quality testing.
That one was done. He combined 03 and 04 together. So we're ready for 905.
Okay, I was very confused. I was like, there's more? Okay. Okay, moving on to 9.05 facility use fees.
And the nice thing about this agenda item, Kyle is going to talk about is, we have had a lot of discussions and done a lot of work on enhancing our actual protocols and policies on facility usage. And tonight is simply, Kyle is bringing you just kind of a revised fee schedule of how much we charge for various types of uses per group. Because again, and you will see there are some increases because just like everything, our costs for, maintaining our facilities after use and that has gone up. So Kyle is going to just briefly just mention those to you.
Yeah, so we have not raised our facility use fees in years and years and years. I don't even know how long it's been, but it's been quite a while. Maybe Doug has an idea, but I can't remember us ever raising them in the years we've been doing this. Yeah, so I've got the current facility use fee structure and then our new fee structure and we've highlighted the changes that we made from the old to the new. And this is going to better cover our costs, that our operational cost, our cost for custodians and everything else. And so I'll stand for any questions.
I don't have, my only question kind of would be, typically, and this would kind of go to Doug, what do we normally see in total facility use fees in a year? I mean, ballpark, give or take $1 million.
Give or take what?
$1 million.
Oh, under $1 million.
Okay.
No, I'm trying to think if it would be in the thousands. I don't know that we had hit 10,000 facility usage.
Why not?
I don't think we get anywhere near 10,000.
Okay.
So I could try to run a report,
That
but it,
plus or minus $100,000 from that number
Okay.
and would satisfy me. And I'm sure
I
you're
think we're in the
correct.
thousands. Yeah.
I'm sure you're
I
correct.
doubt we go over that. Yep.
Kylie, and I'm not asking you to do this. I'm just being lazy, but it would have been nice to have them compared side by side instead of having to flip between these. But let's just use elementary gymnasiums as an example. I think under Schedule E, it's $28 today and you're raising it to $30. Is that correct? If I read it correctly?
Did you say middle school gym?
No, elementary gymnasium.
Oh, elementary gymnasium. Yeah, you're right. It would have been easier if it was side by side. I apologize.
And the only reason I'm bringing this up is I've been in the cable TV business for a long time and you don't ever like to raise rates, right? And so if we're going to raise rates, I think there should be, and if it's been some time since we've done it, I think there should be some logic applied to it so that we don't have to find ourselves 2 years from now having to raise rates again. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
So, and if the delta here is $2, I mean, is it really worth even having the discussion? We've already spent more than that just talking about it, but that's all I'm saying is hopefully some thought has gone into this as far as inflation and actual costs and.
I've put a lot of thought into it. Brooke and I have looked at all the other school districts.
Okay, good.
I mean, and I could have put that in here and I didn't want to overwhelm everybody with a bunch of information but I hope you can trust me that we looked and looked and looked and we spent hours on it, looking at other districts and considering what we're paying our custodians and all of this. And this is, we feel is fair to the community, but we're also getting reimbursed on what our costs are. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think you just hit it. That's the important part, which is, when we incur a cost, we shouldn't be making money, but again, being fair to all the taxpayers, we should be recouping that expense. We can't underwrite things. That's
Right.
not our role, in my opinion. So,
So as you build out your analysis for next year, whenever you think you might increase this,
Mhm.
I would love to see a kind of a separation of hours. Like we had this many hours in middle school, elementary, middle school, high school, whatever, for class A, class B, class C. So then we know if we need to start raising the CDE, if that's the classification, yeah,
Uh-huh.
to compensate for if the rec really booms and they just bring in all these activities and they're doubling or tripling their use of our facilities, we might need to change what we're doing over here. And it's not just well, we had this, we might need to look at it as a whole. And I say
Sure.
but just a thought there so we can
Okay.
kind of see, wait, is our facilities really being consumed by the rec a lot more? I mean, just
Okay.
something to think about.
Sure.
And that's my hope. I hope the rec utilizes our facilities. I hope they triple their offerings. So
Okay.
any other thoughts, questions? Okay,
All right. Thank you very much.
thank you very
Yep.
much. All right, moving on, 9.06, the recent building opportunity bond election results and resolution for sale of bonds.
Yes, we were fortunate, which I'll talk about later in my superintendent's report, to have successful building opportunity bond election results. That in turn means that we now have the opportunity to go out and sell those bonds in the amount of 60 million. However, before we can do that, the board formally has to approve a resolution that just authorizes our financial bonding underwriter to do that, at our direction. And so what we have tonight is we have our financial fiduciary, Mr. Greg Bauenberg from Raymond James. We also have our bond counsel who helped us with the ballot language and different things, worked with the Johnson County Election Office here this evening. But I think Greg is going to come and kind of just give us some as to what the purpose of the resolution is. Kind of, he might get into a little bit if you're interested on just what the kind of the recommendation is. They are the experts in this. What kind of, the bond market has been very volatile, but the last, couple weeks, it's starting to, not be as rapid, with the wave. So I'm going to turn over to Greg and let him talk, and then he'll stand for questions.
Good evening, everyone. Greg Varnberg with Raymond James. I appreciate the introduction. And first of all, congratulations on the bond election. That was great news. And as you may recall, when we talked about the calling the bond election, we had developed a plan of finance. I think we had shared a calendar of events at a couple of points along the way. And I tend to think of the bond sale process really in two steps from the board perspective. Well, I should say three. First of all, we have to have the successful bond election. But the first step is what we call an authorizing resolution. That doesn't obligate you to accept the interest rates that we lock in. It doesn't obligate you to accept the sale results. What it does is it gives our firm and Kevin and his firm at Gilmore and Bell permission to start pulling together the documents and going through the rating process and obtaining insurance quotes and then conducting an order period. And it's during that order period where we will set the final interest rates, come back to you. And that second step from the board perspective is a binding step. That's what we call the bond resolution. And so tonight's resolution is just giving us permission to go through that process to bring you final results. And then that bond resolution would have the final interest rates, amounts, details of the bond issue. And if you were to accept that bond resolution, then that locks in the interest rates and would allow us to work towards a closing. But I also thought it might be helpful to give you a quick update of where we started, a couple of challenges we faced along the way, and the good news that we're still in a position to deliver that no mill levy increase bond election. So when you think back to the plan of finance, when we were calling the bond election, we had an average interest rate or a true interest cost of 4.52%. We thought there might be a little bit of cushion in that interest rate. I'll talk about bond market here in just a second. But we were also looking at commercial development in the northern part of the district. We wanted to factor in what that valuation would be, and we had some preliminary information. We got some more detailed reports from the city of Olathe, and we're able to include that in our updated calculations. We were looking at state aid of 45% on the outstanding bonds pre-2015 elections, 0% on new bonds. We know new state aid percentages will be coming out soon, but we're still using those same percentages that we had previously and feel that those are pretty good estimates. We also were using a mill levy of 22.037 mills. And then once that gets finalized and adjusted, it ended up being 21.979 mills. So just a little bit lower than where we thought it was going to be, but that's what we're using for the base. So it's a no mill levy increase, even at that lower 21.979 mills. And then we had growth rates of 12%, then dropping down to 10 for a couple of years, then 8, and then 6%. Still using those estimates. I think you had a estimate for this coming into this year of like 12.55%. So we're kind of right in line with what we're expecting for this upcoming year. And I believe your average in recent years has been about 16.8%. So still using a lot of those same assumptions. What we have had happen, though, is we had a lot of volatility in the bond market, as Dr. Luttrell had mentioned. About 3 or 4 weeks ago with the announcement of the tariffs, that created a lot of volatility. We watched probably one of the most rapid, significant increases in interest rates that I've seen in my career. We went up 90 basis points in the municipal bond market in about 3 days. And the only other time that that has happened before was the 08-09 financial crisis, the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and the 9/11 attacks. And so it was a pretty significant and obviously caused us some concern. You know, we see interest rates getting away from us. Will this ever settle back down? The good news, we have settled back down. We're not quite to that 4.52% interest rate. Right now, we're at about 4.70. But the good news, too, is that how we're structuring the repayment of the bonds, we're actually able to keep the total debt service very close to what we had used for both principal and interest for calling that bond election. So, and we also are now factoring in the more detailed reports on those commercial properties in the northern part of the district. And so feel really good that we're in a position where currently we can push forward, sell all of the 60 million in bonds, deliver what you promised to the voters of having a no mill levy increase on the plan of finance, assuming that we would invest that bond proceeds at current interest rates. You'd have about 2.4 million in interest earnings. And then when we sell a bond issue, similar to what we experienced in 2018, we'll likely have a reoffering premium that's additional proceeds that are paid in by investors. We'd recommend putting that in a project fund sub-account, kind of holding that there in case you have any cost overruns or, you know, unexpected cost or changes to scope a project that you would need to use that money for. If it's not used on the project, then you would move the interest earnings on the bond proceeds plus that reoffering premium over into the bond and interest fund and apply it towards mill levy management. So, and we do have the plan of finance. We have a refunding component that we would, recommend including in that. If you recall, when we first started talking about the plan of finance, it's really these first couple of years that are tight on the mill levy management. When we called the bond election, we were showing potentially needing to do that refinancing or restructuring in 2026 or 2027. I think we can go ahead and take care of that now and just have that be part of this issue. And even with the the slightly higher interest rates, we're using a little bit lower assessed valuation for those properties in the northern part of the district. And with that restructuring, then we're still able to deliver all of the bond sale at that 21.979 mils. If we were to start the process and something happens in the bond market, interest rates go up again before we get rates locked in, we can always pull back and stop the sale process and just wait for things to stabilize. But we did go ahead and notify Moody's that we will eventually need a bond rating. They're in a position to deliver that as quickly as next Monday. We worked on drafting the offering document that can be finalized probably within the week. And if everything comes together, we could be in a position, assuming interest rates remain favorable, to come back to you at your next meeting, which I believe is June 23rd. So I'll stop there. I wanted to give you an overview of where we stand on the plan of finance and the process that we would go through to complete the bond sale.
Greg, thanks for coming tonight. And I'll just restate kind of in my own terms. Treasury's gotten murdered. 90 basis points is insane. And it has me uneasy until the markets settle a little more. I'm going to be really honest with you. I know 4.7 looks like a bargain now compared to what it was, but this is just bananas. The added costs it's going to add to this. So I just have to be honest. I'm saying that as much for everybody else as it is to you, Greg. So, in this reoffering premium, so we're recasting everything?
No.
I was trying, you use some terminology in there in terms of recasting and premium that I'm not sure I picked up on, or maybe I just invented it.
No, I'm happy to clarify on a couple of things. And I do want to start with saying, with the total principal and interest on the 60 million in bonds, when we called the bond election, how we had the bond structured, we were having total principal and interest payments that were about 113 million. And even at that 4.7% slightly higher rate, after we get through this tighter period on the mill levy, then we're able to slightly accelerate the repayment in some of the later years to where that total principal and interest is still right at that 113 million. So really happy to see that we don't have an added debt service cost as a result, even though we're dealing with some slightly higher interest rates. So when in terms of restructuring and reoffering premium, when we sell a bond issue to investors, we can sell bonds at a discount, which would be like 97-98% of face value. We can sell bonds at par, which is 100% of face value, or we can sell bonds at a premium. And investors may pay a purchase price of 102 or 103%. That would be a premium sold bond. And what we really care most about is what approach drives the lowest yield. Will investors accept a lower yield if they pay a discount or a premium? And for about the last 10 to 15 years in the bond market, bonds that are sold at a premium will drive a lower yield than a bond sold at a discount. So from my perspective, it comes with two pluses, if you will. One, we get a lower borrowing cost from a premium approach. But two, now we've got extra money paid into the district. This is exactly what we ran into in 2018. And so here are, the premium it will vary from the time we sell the bond, or from now until the time we actually lock in the bond sale. But the reoffering yields from our trading desk show about 2.8 million in premium is what we're expecting to be paid into the district. So once you move that into the bond and interest fund, you can't move it back out for project cost. But what we did, and really appreciate Kevin at Gilmore and Bell helping with this, is we created what's called a project fund subaccount. So we'll have a project fund where we'll put the 60 million in proceeds into that project construction fund. And the project fund subaccount is where we'll hold, let's say it is the 2.8 million in premium, then you can have that money. We don't need it for mill levy management in the first year or two. But if we hold it in that account, then if you run into some challenge in construction, you know you've got those dollars that can be used for the project. So that's the benefit of the selling bonds at a reoffering premium. In addition to that, when we take that money and put it in the project fund, we'll have it invested. And, you know, current 1-year treasury right now is about 4.2%. So you'll have some meaningful interest earnings. That 2.4 million interest earnings will grow inside the project fund and also that project fund sub-account. So you'll have 2.8 million potentially if that's the reoffering premium amount. And then you'll also have 2.4 million of investment earnings that you can use towards project costs. And if not spent, then that money will move over into the bond and interest fund when the project is done entirely. The restructuring or refunding is really looking at some principal payments that are coming due in this next fiscal year and refinancing those and moving them out a few years, excuse me. So we're basically taking some principal that's coming due in September of this year and moving it out a few years just so we can layer in all of the bonds without having the mill levy spike up in the first few years on the issue. So that's the refunding or restructuring piece.
And so what's the implication on total dollars of that component? Because debt deferred is debt incurred.
Right. So the additional, so moving those principal payments out will result in $1 million of additional interest expense. But on a present value basis, if you look at, you know, the PV calculation of that, it's about a $240,000 present value benefit today. So the actual cost is $1 million over time. But we also looked at some other solutions like driving more premium, maybe as much as say 6 million in premium, intentionally driving that. And instead of restructuring bonds, taking some of that reoffering premium and immediately putting it into the bond and interest fund, that came at a cost to the district of about 3 to 4 million. So to achieve, and even if you look back at our original numbers for the plan of finance for calling the bond election, we had that restructuring component in there, but we were showing it might be needed in 2026 or 2027. And so it's always been kind of part of something that we've looked at to manage that mill levy. But I think if we do it now and we do it one time and can be done with it, then that kind of puts all of this to rest. And hopefully you don't have to consider restructuring it, 1 or 2 years down the road.
Well, and you're getting to where I'm trying to kind of go, which is, the speculative, and I appreciate all your advice. Please don't take me the wrong way, but coming in with the speculative that in the back half of this bond, we're going to accelerate payments when we already know our growth is coming here, and we're not that many years away from needing to issue yet more to keep up with growth. And so I'm trying to get to the ultimate strategy here, which is we're kicking a can, my words, not yours. We're kicking a can and we're counting on blue skies in the future. And I think you're mostly right, but it doesn't make me always feel warm and fuzzy.
And keep in mind, and I think I had shared this comment with you when we first started looking at this, it's the tight years are really kind of the next 5. Then after that, your debt profile really drops off to where you have a lot of capacity. And we've run some scenarios where much larger bond issues can be layered in pretty easily. It's just, how do we get through these next 4 or 5 years without having the mill levy increase? And what's the least expensive way to accomplish that? And the acceleration is not significant on the back end of this compared to what we had looked at initially. I just thought it would be important to the board to be able to layer in a plan of finance that has pretty much the same overall debt service cost over time. and can all be done at that 21.979 mils.
And I appreciate that. And I'm not, believe it or not, I'm not trying to derail it or undo it, but from, what the board has asked for and our future obligations, we're already not taxing to cover our future obligations. So it just makes me uncomfortable. Because anyway, that's all I got.
And Greg, I'll just say, I think you did a really good job on your conservative estimates. I really appreciate you taking that real conservative approach. My question for you is relatively simple. And forgive me if it's unintelligent, but given the current situation of the markets, what are the pros and cons of doing the full 60 million now, as opposed to maybe doing 20 million now, 20 million in 6 months, 20 million in 12 months? Just curious.
Yeah, and I tend to think of the answer to that question from really a pretty simple perspective, that it's very important to deliver what you promised to the voters during the bond election campaign. And that really comes from two angles. One, delivering the projects that they're expecting or the improvements they're expecting to get, and then also the cost and the mill levy. And if you we looked at some scenarios of splitting it, looked at 30 million and 30 million and delaying it a year. And so then if interest rates remain the same, that's a smart move because you'll save 1 year's worth of interest on 30 million. But then we also calculate what's the break-even point. How much would interest rates need to move in that 1 year period? And the answer is 55 basis points. So then we take it a step further and we created a graph to show how often does that happen where we have 55 basis point move in a 1 year period of time. And it's happened, I believe, every single year for the last 20. So it's pretty common. Could go in your favor, could go against you. If it goes in your favor, then you really feel good about that decision. But I come back and keep in mind, we just had a week where rates went up 90 basis points. So things can happen in the financial markets. Not predicting it would, but it can. And if you're in a position now where you can sell the bonds, lock in the financial side of that, delivering what you promised to the voters, at least from my opinion or perspective, it feels like that's something that you should want to consider. You take the interest rate risk off the table, and you've got your plan of finance locked in, and it's a no mill levy increase issue. So, that's really the way I look at that. If you had 30 million, potentially would save maybe $1.5 million in interest expense if rates remain the same and just delaying 30 million for 1 year. Does that help answer your question?
It does. I'm trying to grapple with hedging, right? And
Sure.
Just not a gambler. So,
Well, and for that, because I'm kind of in the same hedge boat, because rates moving as they have, but there's other markets, commodity markets, other things that are going to impact us. And so when we talk about delivering on what we anticipate for the 60 million, the costs have already gone up since we had the first conversation. And, the board doesn't know what the actual potential for delivering on these projects is yet. I think some initial conversations, we're talking at least 2 years to deliver these projects, material costs, labor costs, our ability to deliver on the second half of the 30 million. Hopefully it's still there.
And the other thing too, and I stopped short of sharing one other number that's important. You would save 1 year's of interest expense, but you would also lose 1 year's of interest earnings. And say it's 4% instead of 4.2, and that's 1.2 million of interest earnings. So it's really that differential that you're potentially looking to benefit is about 300,000.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, if you have delivering on what you promised on the project, if all 60 million goes in the project fund, and let's say you spend it over 2 years and have an average life of 1 year, that's where you're getting the 2.4 million in investment earnings. And that plus the reoffering premium gives you that cushion to help if you have cost overruns or changes in scope. Now you've got an extra 4 or 5 million to work with.
Right, but that's anticipated just to keep up with the IRS's number because we have to arbitrage any earnings
Only
above and beyond their value, right?
Right. And right now, we've looked at, when you look at the bond arbitrage yield relative to what interest earnings are, you're not able to generate a yield above that bond arbitrage yield. So you would only rebate if you exceed that arbitrage limit. And
Do you have an idea what you think that's going to be? I'm sorry if I missed it in the report. It's busy beekeeping season.
Yeah, so the investment rate, like the 1-year treasury rate right now is about 4.2%. And the bond arbitrage yield is calculated a little differently than the true interest cost.
Yeah.
And so the bond arbitrage yield is 4.537.
Okay, so it is. Okay.
So you're close, but not exceeding that. And honestly, if you had to pay arbitrage rebate, that's not a bad thing because that means you maximized every penny you could on the investment earnings.
And so obviously, we trust your opinion here. So it's your opinion to go ahead and do the full issue.
Yeah, when you look at some of the recent volatility, and a few weeks ago, I was pretty nervous it'd be a different conversation if it didn't settle back down. And really what you're looking at is what you're trying to save is that difference between the interest expense offset by the investment earnings. So it's really 300,000. Even the 1.5 million, that's where the 55 basis point change would you would regret splitting it into multiple issues. So my view is we got a chance to lock this in. We came through a pretty volatile bond market. We've been given a window of opportunity, and I'd feel pretty bad if I gave you advice to split it and then that backfired. So,
and just for the record, I came at you and did all that stuff. I actually agree with you, and I think the street agrees with you. Now's as good a time as any. In the future, we just don't know what treasuries are going to do, and the potential for them just to influence the municipal is too much risk. I actually do agree. I just wanted to put you through the ringer to make sure I really agreed.
Thank you.
So I have a question for you, Dr. Luttrell, then. Are we just missing something in the nomenclature then on this? Because we've got resolution for sale of bonds, and according to Greg, what you just described is what you need from us right now is.
What's needed right now is authorizing them to basically pursue the sale, get all the paperwork in place.
Right.
But then they will go out and get some costs, interest rates, but they will bring them back to us. And that will be at that time, you all will basically approve if you want to accept the terms that they've put forth. And add to that or take away, Greg.
Yeah, that's it. Basically, the authorizing resolution is telling us to get to work and bring back something for you to consider. And
so this should be the authorizing resolution and not the resolution for the sale of bonds. I'm getting hung up on like I said, I'm just getting hung up on the technicalities of the wording.
No, that's good. I mean, I see
Okay.
your company.
Okay.
If you open it up, that agenda item,
Yeah.
it actually has the recommended action. And that's what we really need to read would be the board is asked to approve resolution authorizing the offering.
Yeah.
Correct, Greg?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Can you clarify one thing? You had talked about our bond rating meeting.
Mhm.
Now, that hasn't taken place yet.
We had a conversation with Moody's today. They have not gone to their rating committee yet. And so they'll go to a committee. If you authorize moving forward with adopt the resolution tonight, then Moody's will have their committee meeting next Monday and report back to us what the rating will be. But we just went through a surveillance review with Moody's. So your information is pretty fresh with them. It's not really a very extensive process for them to deliver that rating.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for coming in tonight. Thank you
Thank you.
for all the information.
Sure.
Okay, moving on to 9.07, republishing the budget.
What, said every year, it's kind of you have to send your budget that you approve after your budget hearing that you usually have in August, September to the state. They review it all, but it takes them quite a while to review. And then later in the year, they will send out if they have found any omissions that, you didn't cross this T, you didn't dot this I, you didn't put an amount in here. Then they send that back to a district that's impacted. And at that point in time, you have to basically republish the budget, which republishing the budget also involves basically you have to also, because of statute, have another kind of a repeat of the actual budget hearing. But I'm going to let, like I said, Mr. Schwinn is here and he can kind of give you an update. This is something that, again, it is, it's not anything that said it's reviewed, but what I put in the notes there, 2 years ago, there were 119 districts that had to republish. Last year, there was I think in upper 60s that had to. The last time I think that we had to republish here, and it was in the notes too, I think, from Mr. Swin, I think it was 2021, and there was there were some usually various reasons, but he'll give you a brief update as to how that came about with the republishing.
Yes, let's just cut to the chase. It was my error. Fund 34 in the budget book, if you've got your budget book in front of you, or you can go online, page 107. I failed to budget expenditures for code 34. Complete oversight. Never done that before in my career. So I'm ending on a low note here. I would like to say it was a training exercise for Mr. Holder so I could show him the process, because we have been through the process before, and several districts, as you can tell from the numbers, have been through it. This is not the right way to have to go through the process, but you do want to wait till the end of the year. I actually knew this mistake early on, but you don't want to republish in October or November, and then the state come back in May and say, oh, you need to republish for SPED or republish for another fund. So we waited. There are no other funds that we need to republish. But it will be going in the paper next week, Miami County Republic. It has to be published once, 10-day waiting period. We will need to have a hearing at 5:45 on Monday, June 23rd, just prior to the start of the board meeting. And it is an open hearing. People can come. The thing is, it was a human error. It's not going to raise the mill levy, and the funds are in the budget to pay for our career tech ed expenditures. It just wasn't typed in the fields. So it's not terrible process to do other than publication. It does require 2 board meetings to get it done, tonight to explain it, approve the notice that needs to go to the paper, and then to actually have the hearing. So, but the main thing is to tell voters this is not raising your mill levy. It's not something that we didn't budget for. It just that all the fields weren't properly filled. So with that, I can stand for questions.
My question is, you said it was on page 107. I want to update my copy that I've got in front of me.
Yes.
So when I refer to it,
Yeah, if you have yours, and if you go to page 107, and if you look first at line 175, about the middle of the page, you'll see running expenditures. In 2022-23, we spent $621,000 in career tech ed. The following year, 23-24, we spent $623,342. And then you see a glaring 0 for 24-25. And if you drop down and look at the details, you will see that entire, all the places that we budget salaries and benefits was left blank for that fund. So we're going to republish saying that we're going to spend $750,000 out of that fund. I don't anticipate us spending that much, but you don't want to cut yourself short, because there's no time to republish a second time. So 75 sets the lid high enough. Chances are the number will come in somewhere around 675. And then we'll be fine.
Thank you.
You said 750, Doug, but I think you meant 725.
Oh, did I say yes?
Okay,
Yes, I was
725.
going from memory. I should have looked at my.
725. Okay.
You're right, 725. Sorry. Good catch.
Okay, I have two questions. One, I remember during the budget, we'd had quite a few questions about the reclassification of things. And so I want to make sure that maybe it had been zero. We had expenses last year, but this year it was zero because you were like, oh, well, we had to reclassify certain things. This wasn't one of them. Okay.
No, we have career tech ed expenditures every year, and as our career tech ed building will be built, the new building, I expect, in fact, these expenditures are going to go up quite a bit as we offer more classes and involve more students. And
Sure. So how does this affect us for the year? So if I put, well, 725,000 extra dollars of expense into my budget, does not balance. So are we pulling from somewhere? Have we overspent since this is the end of our year?
yeah, the money that's coming is from transfers. And if you look up a line, if you're on that page 107, you will see that there was no money transferred from general fund. And the last 2 years, it was 500,000 and 520. The money is sitting in the supplemental general fund. It just wasn't shown as a transfer here. So the money that's being used to pay for career tech ed actually comes from both a combination of your general fund and a transfer from supplemental general fund.
So
So- Sorry, so this earmarks it essentially for spending, which is understood. We haven't overspent there, not
No,
thinking we had a surplus.
no, the money's setting in supplemental general, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to restate that the debit is out there.
Yes,
You just need to write down the credit now.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it just didn't get moved all the way through, so.
Okay.
John, I can't believe you didn't catch this when we went through the budget.
I share the responsibility with Mr. Schwinn in failing to point out, because this is T account tick and tie stuff. I missed it.
And the other spot that I should have caught was actually the notice of hearing, which is on page 141 of the budget book. If you're quickly going fund by fund and looking at actuals from 22-23, and 22-23-24, and then you look at the proposed budget, there's that zero there. It is funny. I did reach out to the state. I was like, golly, can't you guys have a formula like to throw up a red flag that would have caught it for me? And I went to school with Sarah at KSD. So Sarah laughed and she goes, yeah, we could add a formula in there to catch that next time. I says, well, great. It ain't going to help me any, but it might help the next person. So they said that was a good suggestion that, yeah, if you've budgeted the last 2 years and then this year it's a zero, it should give you a warning or something to say, hey, you might check your expenditures because it's shown as a zero.
Well, or you'd hope in their form that it would all flow. Like if it's over here, then it has to be over here. I mean,
Tick and tie?
yes, as we push our glasses up our nose, yes, the accountant's up here.
Yes.
Okay, any other thoughts or questions regarding this?
I would say that is a high note. Look, you might have a rule named after you now in the Kansas state budget process.
If they get a formula put in to fix this for the next person, I'll feel very.
See,
proud
there
that
you go. There you
Well,
go.
the Schwinn error, like,
Yes.
oh, you got a Schwinn error.
Nobody's ever going to do that one again. Yeah, the last time it ever happened.
Schwinn the budget.
So,
Okay, all right, well, moving on then to our action items, 10.01. Approve the authorization for resolution for a sale of bonds, GO bonds.
I would love to move to the board to approve resolution 25-14.
Second.
We're gonna hold 1 second. It,
That's what the recommended action is.
no, it actually already has our motion and voting in board docs. Is that correct?
It must have pulled from the consent agenda. I can get that corrected.
Okay. Okay. Nope, it's okay. It concerned me for a moment because it felt like the future was being told to us.
And it looks pretty accurate.
That's what I was extremely concerned with.
Yeah, it does say consent.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Rachel, please take the vote.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Hole,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Chitwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
approved.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to 10.02, notice of a budget hearing.
I'm not as excited about it, Doug, but I will move to approve the notice of a budget hearing.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Any discussion? Rachel, please take the vote.
Mr. Hole,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Chitwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
approved.
Okay, and our final action item of the evening, 10.03, approve the Woodlands Spring Middle School Assistant Principal.
Madam President, I move the board approve the Woodland Spring Middle School Assistant Principal as recommended by staff.
And I second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, Rachel, please take the vote.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Chitwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Hole,
Yes.
approved.
Okay. All right, moving on to future discussion items. Anything we'd like to add? Okay, anything that we think we can take off? What about the end of year staff report? I think we could take that one off. Class sizes. So we just kind of got a snippet of that, but I can't remember who put that on there.
I did after a site council meeting.
Okay, do you further expand or I can't remember what you,
Yeah, the biggest issue is they had a couple, so how this got started was they had a couple classrooms getting ready to exceed 25 kiddos per class. And all the impacts that a larger class size has. One of the big ones is also that we only have 25 cubbies in those classrooms. So if we exceed it, then a student is left without one and the teacher is kind of shuffling around their stuff all year. So I think we're looking in in a pretty good spot to not exceed those numbers for the next one.
We should not be exceeding the numbers at the upper level, the 26 at all. But like I said, I have been in discussions in recent, with Dr. Miller as well as some of the parents that have expressed some interest in knowing, okay, what our rule of thumb was, what our plan was, and I've shared back what my thinking was, and those discussions have gone well. We did just today, over the weekend, at one of our elementary schools because just part of when you open up a new building, you're going to have some growing pains to expand it because the new facilities are not efficient like ones that you've got less. Did add one additional, we're gonna post one additional FTE if they haven't already from them. And then we're gonna try to see just how they fly, because we will have some numbers, some students transfer And we'll also have some that transfer out. And so the closer I can wait until we get into August, plus some of the neighboring school districts in the next week to 10 days will know how many applications they took in from families requesting to go to their district. And I should have by the end of the week what we're looking at there. And that's going to give me some insight too. But I think we're continuing to monitor it. I've been talking to any individuals that's had questions, and those conversations have gone well. But as Director Horn said, one thing is we do go into the planning and design for our additions. We do want to make sure that we make sure our architects and them are aware of what our maximum capacities are potentially at some point, if we ever need to, that we have enough of the infrastructure there to address that.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable if we have to go 26 for a hot minute, because like you said, we are growing. We do get some increases and, maybe we get twins instead of one kid that we were expecting. So I think it's a natural thing that we have to deal with. I just would like to see us handle it a little bit more seamlessly than leaving a kiddo out. And I do appreciate the caution and the thought you put into it, because I know you were weighing some really impactful things with some of the open enrollment and some of the schools around us. So I think your caution was warranted, but I think it is something that is worth keeping an eye on.
I actually agree with that. And I'm curious to know that as we approach those deadlines in enrollment, if we think a class is going to have 26 in those 4th and 5th grades and we don't have the cubbies and stuff, how can we retrofit it now, quick
Yes.
on the fly? Because I do think that's part of elementary. And if it just starts off on a bad foot if you're left out and you're the odd one out right from the get-go. So
Yeah, and I know this isn't a discussion item, so I'm just going to throw in, I think the thing that's kind of bumping us along here, and while I certainly appreciate waiting to the last day, when we balance the sizes to when we're going to fish or cut bait with decisions, will probably make staff and parents feel better. So some contemplation around that, I think, is in order. I don't want to add it. I just want.
well, I say let's leave it on the discussion items, and maybe it does warrant a little bit more justification and overall thought in some of the small areas, right? Like knowing that 26 is really where we try to be for staffing, just knowing some of that and making sure it's consistent across the board. So
Yeah, I don't think it's as urgent as it was feeling now. So I think it's something that we can definitely keep on there, but doesn't need immediate.
okay. If there's no additions, we took off a couple or one maybe at least. Any? Yeah. Okay. Moving on to our board work calendar. I felt like we looked fairly good at where we were. Dr. Lachelle, do you have any comments or thoughts?
We are at the end of the year. I know that the bulk of our new agenda will come. You did approve the meeting agenda schedule last meeting or 2 meetings ago, and we're in the process of, for this next year, starting in July, making sure that we've got all those items in place. We probably will wrap up the next meeting with whatever, some of the year-end items that are on there. But then I know as we get into the July, we will have some items that you'll start seeing appear that we haven't had at least over the last year or so, which will be especially as we get into the bond projects with regular updates from, our facilities, construction safety department, as well as, from our architects and general contractor, just keeping you abreast of how the design's going, what the latest timelines look like, what our project costs are running. And you'll start seeing more of that. But I think we're in good shape as we head up the year. But you'll start seeing a lot of the things repeat themselves too. We get into the fall, we'll start seeing, hopefully, again, assessment data. We'll do more, again, our comprehensive strategic plan updates. So it's just a continuous cycle with some new elements put in every year.
Okay. Okay. Anything else in regards to board work calendar? Okay. Moving on, 13.01, Board of Education member reports.
I have just a quick one. I have both a younger student attending some of the camps at the high school, but I also have a high school student helping run some of the camps at the high school. And I want to give a huge shout out to our basketball team as well as the Dayton Creek Camp Convention folks, because this year they had to go through a tornado warning, which talk about a learning experience for some high schoolers, but give them some elementary schoolers and have them keep calm during a tornado warning while taking shelter. It's very good. So I really appreciate the coaches and all of the staff that kept our kids safe through that and handled it with grace.
I would agree. The communication that went out immediately to parents, telling them where their kids were, how the safety that we were providing them, all of that was crucial. And I'm sure in a very chaotic, scary time for parents, it was much needed. And so bravo to all of those coaches and leaders doing that. I was incredibly impressed and have told them so already, because it's amazing when that comes together like that.
One thing I'd just like to add real quick too, we had a meeting this week. There's a new Kiwanis Club in Spring Hill, and they had their charter event last month. However, we got the report this week, and I want to give a shout out to the boys high school basketball team. Without them and Coach Bouchard, they made it just a tremendous success. We had 30 plus kids show up for the basketball camp and raised nearly $3,000 that's going to be used to be put back into the community for youth events. So I really want to thank the boys that showed up early on a Saturday morning to help us make that a success.
I do want to say that I did get to attend our state softball and state track events, and it's exciting to see our kids competing. They all did us proud, every single person out there, but the real winners out there are those coaches putting in the extra time with our kids, keeping them sunblocked up and hydrated, and I just thank you. Thank you, coaches, and all the assistants and everyone that travels with those teams to make sure the kids stay safe and compete well.
And I think I saw a picture that all of the administrative staff made the trip. So that I thought that was pretty impressive as well. So even just the supporting players in this made the haul, which I thought was really cool.
I will say it's very exciting time for athletics because all the competitions are right there. So you can kind of just hop around to go see all the people. So there's a lot of options for our activities and athletics, but that's one that you can hit a lot of things all at once.
I'm kind of in the mode of life where I'm hearing about alumni. So I did want to say that it is really encouraging, and it should be encouraging to especially our high school staff, to see 4 years down the road or 5 years down the road, their kids graduating. We went to a graduation at K-State, and it was one field of engineering had 4 Spring Hill High School graduates in it. And so chemical, and Mrs. McDonald taught chemistry for a long time, the advanced chemistry. And anyway, I thought that was really neat. And also a 2021 grad, I think, got 5th place in the Division II decathlon. So Otto Niddle. So he was at Missouri S&T. So it's that I think is where you see the real rewards and the real work is down the line, several years. So it's very encouraging.
Very cool. All right, any other comments or thoughts before moving on? Okay, and Dr. Luttrell, our superintendent report.
I am going to focus my superintendent's report on one brief item, and that is just simply, I cannot say enough how appreciative I am for our patrons coming forth and really supporting and giving approval, a resounding approval to our building opportunity bond. Our official results did wind up with a 26.1% turnout, 4,373 votes cast, which, and out of that 4,373 votes, there were 2,802 votes yes, 1,568 no, for a 64% yes votes in support. And again, I can tell you, having been through many elections, any win, but especially when you get 60% plus, that doesn't just happen by chance. It takes a lot of work from a lot of stakeholders with an aligned vision. And I can honestly say that our district went about this bond election the right way. We started months, over a year ago, with looking at our numbers, looking where we needed to be. And then we went through our community engagement meetings, and then we, talked about, okay, what projects would be the best to put into it. Then we brought that to the board for discussion. Then we went to the campaign, and we went to as many people as we could. We had town hall meetings, Facebook Live meetings. We had, you saw, signage, websites. And again, I think that shows that, again, the community was behind it because they felt that it was a good plan. It was definitely focused on our needs and not our wants. So again, I just want to say thank you to everyone. And now it is up to us as a district and as a board to continue, as we've talked tonight with the bonds and everything, to deliver on what we promised. And that's why as we come in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we will be having, especially, I plan on having, our architect and construction managers to come in and start talking to us about just what we've done so far with our design programming, as well as some of the project timelines we've come up with, and then get into a regular established protocol of whether it be once a month, once every other month, as to how we report that out. But again, thank you to all of our patrons of USD230 for supporting our building opportunity bond. And now we'll move forward with it because it's going to be very exciting to see all those projects come to fruition. That's my superintendent's report.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Luttrell. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.